Before we dive in, if you enjoy what you hear, be sure to subscribe so you never miss a tale. Like, share, and invite others to join us in the shadows, because fear is always better when it's shared. This story was first posted at creepypasta.org by user K.E. Moore. Title: Pills Part 2, Where's Alphonse? I asked. Looking around, I was met with gazes that hid to varying degrees a guided kind of fear. I could feel it too. Was the real experiment finally beginning? Was this how our mornings would go from now on? Wake up and someone is missing until that someone is us. Ah, he's probably just taking a good dump, Billy grunted. I gotta tell you, I've been dropping some pretty healthy kids off at the pool since we got here. Gross, Amy said, her nose crinkling. It's true, Billy said plaintively. Maybe they got him, Frank said without bothering to look up. Huh? I said. Come on, who would give a bunch of bums like us the good life like this, right? He said. Face it, kids, you enjoyed the gravy train for a few days, but we're about to pull into the station. Last stop. The words, last stop, carried a leaden, dark feel with them, nestling in my mind and worrying away at the sense of comfort and security I had started to develop towards my new surroundings. Again, looking at my companions around the table, I could tell they felt it too. I'd begun to imagine all of the things they might have done to Alphonse. Maybe they yanked him from his bed in the middle of the night, strapped him to a stainless steel table, the entire room drenched in thick, heavy shadow, the only light a naked bulb above that sent its sickening yellow glow dancing on the sharp edges of unnamed instruments. I could see faces behind face masks looming over his long thin frame, studying him coldly as their tools of torture neared his exposed skin. I could almost feel that odd mixture of heat and cold as the metal first pressed and then began to penetrate. Hey, Alphonse said as he stepped through the cafeteria door. Relief overtook me as I could feel the adrenaline drain from my system, leaving behind its invoice of shaking limbs and gulping lungs. I was being silly, of course. Hey buddy, we was just talking about ya, Billy said, scooting over to give the big man some room. I was so relieved to see Alphonse here, healthy and alive and not being tortured, that at first I missed the worried look on his face. It wasn't until he spoke that I realized that the man was genuinely spooked. Did you guys get your pill today? He asked. Of course, I said. What, you didn't? Slowly, Alphonse shook his head, his yellowed eyes wide and nervous. Nah, man. I shrugged. Don't worry about it. It's probably just part of the experiment. Even as I heard the words come out of my mouth, though, Dr. Brun's words rang in my head. You take the pills to keep them away. Fear trilled through the faces of my companions at this revelation, yet no one said anything. Almost as though not talking about our terror might somehow make it go away, we spent the rest of breakfast talking about anything but the ominous instructions given by Dr. Brun. Breakfast over, the seven of us went about our day. It's odd how quickly you can form a routine, even in the strangest of conditions. We'd only been at the compound for 4 days and I could already predict where everyone would go after our morning meal. Carly curled up in the library section of the common room as she read one of those novels that usually have a statuesque, half-naked couple on the verge of making love on the cover. Frank and Billy watched an old movie on one of the common room TVs. Pedro would be working out, and Alphonse. Usually Alphonse took up one of the desktop computers, headphones on, playing some vintage video game or something. But today his usual spot in the common room remained vacant. I didn't pay this any mind, as my usual post-breakfast spot was sitting next to Amy as we played video games. She had won 8 races in a row on Mario Kart when I threw my controller down in mock disgust. I'm going to work out, I sniffed. You mad bro? She teased. I'm not bad, bro. You cheated. I would have won those if you had played fair. How did I cheat? She said, indignant. I almost told her she was cheating by looking so pretty all the time. I had started to develop a little crush on her, but, not wanting to seem like a creeper, I simply said, "You must have rigged my controller. That's the only way I can explain it." "Right," she placated me. "It was all the controller. Go work out, and when you're done, you may want to try practicing unless you want me to humiliate you after lunch." I was thinking Street Fighter, after lunch, I said. "Oh no, no more Street Fighter," she growled. "Why's that?" I said innocently. "You cheat," she snapped. Laughing, I left the common room. I strolled down the white, unmarked hallways toward the gym. I wasn't sure if there really was a romance budding between Amy and me, or if she just liked hanging out with me because I was the only one in our group within 10 years of her age. Whatever the case, being around her had the effect of making me feel fuzzy, almost high. Something about the cold hallways of the compound had a way of sucking the happiness from me, though. I was about to round the last left turn before the gym when I felt a hand reach out and clamp down on my bicep. "Hey man," Alphonse whispered. "Holy sweet Jesus." I jumped. "You scared the fuck out of me, man." "Listen," he whispered. Alphonse's big yellow eyes were wide open, jerking all over the place as beads of sweat sprouted and tentatively traced their way down his forehead. "I'm seeing shit. Strange shit." Whoa, Alphonse, calm down," I said as I placed a hand on his shoulder. "It's all right. Everything's fine. Just relax," I cooed in what I hoped was a comforting voice. The thing was, even in that stark white hallway, I didn't really believe what I was saying. Not deep down. "The shadows, man. They're moving." "What shadows?" I asked. Instinctively, I looked around. There were no shadows, the entire hallway bathed in the white, soulless light of the overhead fluorescent bulbs. It dawned on me then that there were hardly any shadows anywhere in the complex. All of the common areas, including the halls, were bathed in thick, omnipresent, white light. Only our rooms seemed to escape the all-encompassing glare, and even then only after bedtime. "The shadows," Alphonse insisted. "Everywhere, shadows everywhere, they're fucking moving." "Shadows don't move," I soothed. "Then there's something in them," he protested. "Look, man. I know what I'm seeing. There is something moving. There's something down here with us, and we can't see it if we're taking the pills." "This is crazy," I breathed. "You need to relax. You're probably just freaking out because they skipped your pill today. Take a breath and calm down." "I can't calm down." "Alphonse," I snapped. Something, maybe the volume, maybe the way I squeezed his shoulder, seemed to focus Alphonse. His eyes stopped darting from one place to another, and he looked at me for the first time since grabbing me and yanking me aside. "Listen, you're going to be okay. All right, let's get you to the common room, and maybe just hanging out with other people will do you some good. Deal?" Alphonse looked down at his shoes and shook his head. "Yeah, all right. You're probably right. Place got me all fucked up in the head, you know? My mama told me not to trust people that just hand shit out. She said everyone's in it for themselves. You know what I'm saying?" "Come on," I said. "Been through the same shit. Of course I know what you're saying." I walked Alphonse to the common room, and after sitting him next to Frank and Billy, went over and told Amy what had happened. "Keep an eye on him, okay?" I asked. "What are you going to do?" she said. "Nothing. I'm just saying, Alphonse shouldn't be alone today." "Yeah," she nodded. "You're right." For the rest of the day, Alphonse was shifty and nervous. Unless he was actively engaged in something, he would look over his shoulder or stare into the corners of the room. But at least he stopped talking about the shadows. Shadows that didn't exist. The next morning, I grabbed my breakfast from the counter. It was odd how we never saw any staff, I realized. Every time we came in for a meal, the food would be sitting there in a buffet-style tray, but we never saw anyone change them out. Every time I got undressed and showered at night, my dirty clothes would be whisked away and replaced with a fresh set by the time I was done. This was just another oddity of our new habitat, one that I'm thinking our hosts weren't counting on us to notice. To a degree, they were right. As I sat down to bagels and a fruit salad, I realized I was holding my breath as the rest of my companions filed in. It wasn't until Alphonse arrived with a smile on his face that I finally exhaled. "I guess your pill came today," I said, patting him on the back. "Yeah," he chuckled. "Feel better?" I asked. "You know," he said, turning to look me in the eye. "I actually do." Across the table I saw Amy roll her pretty green eyes and shake her head. As soon as Alphonse wasn't looking, I scowled at her and she stuck her tongue out at me. I couldn't believe it. But I was falling for this girl. 6 of us showed up at roughly the same time, and we realized that, again, one of our number was missing. Again those same haunted looks rested on the faces surrounding me. This time Pedro was missing. He didn't stay gone as long Alphonse had, but 10 minutes after Frank ambled in and moodily plopped down in his chair, Pedro finally came in, looking cagey. "No pill?" Billy asked. Pedro shook his head. Before the panic emanating from the man could infect the rest of us, Alphonse spoke up. "Don't even sweat it, brother. You'll see some weird shit. But nothing's gonna get you and you'll probably get your pill tomorrow." "Yeah," he said in a husky, hushed tone. "You know," Amy chimed in. "I bet this is a behavior experiment. They're probably not testing a drug at all, but instead they're testing us." "What do you mean, sweetie?" Carly asked. "Think about it," she said. "Does anyone feel any different after taking their pills?" We all shook our heads. "Right. Nothing. I mean, I feel better. But that's probably from the regular exercise and the food." She shook her head. "I think this is a behavioral experiment. Like, okay, let's tell these test subjects something spooky will happen if they don't take the pills, give them placebos, and see what happens when they take the placebo away." "I don't speak Italian," Frank snapped. "What the hell is a placebo?" Amy rolled her eyes. "Placebo is not Italian. It's a term used to describe a sugar pill, a pill that doesn't do anything at all. It's used in experiments. Like, okay, let's say you want to test how effective a drug is. You give one group the real drug, and one group the placebo. You compare how people using the real drug perform compared to those who use the placebo. So you're saying there's another group of schmucks like us with real drugs?" Frank asked skeptically. "No." Amy shook her head. "I'm saying, maybe they aren't testing a drug, but instead testing us. Do you get it?" "No," Frank said gruffly, and Amy just threw her hands up in the air. Carly patted her on the shoulder. "I get you, sweetie. We aren't all idiots like Frank." "Hey," Frank whined. "Thank you, Carly," Amy said, as she patted the older woman's hand. Learning our lessons from the day before, we each made a point of not leaving Pedro alone. Pedro, who usually spent most of his time isolated from the group, spent the entire day watching movies with Frank and Billy, or playing computer games with Alphonse, or jumping in the rotation for a match with Amy or me. It helped, but if you watched him close enough, you could see his eyes darting for the corners. You could see those little hints of fear, the little rivulets of sweat at his temples, the slight tremor in his voice, the way he would jump if someone touched him or spoke to him from behind. Still, Pedro, and the rest of us for that matter, made it through the day.